Building trust takes time. At Dunn Lumber, we believe trusting relationships are the key to long-term success. In 1907, my great-grandfather made a promise that Dunn Lumber would always give our customers and employees a square deal. He was selling shakes and shingles to different parts of the country, and he knew a single promise broken could ruin his business. Today, our dedication to keeping my family's promise remains the same. Here's how we've been building trust for more than 100 years. After beginning as a wholesaler in 1907, Albert's sons, Charles and Ed Dunn, purchased Holmes Lumber in 1931, which became our Dunn Lumber Lake Union location. It was during the Great Depression, and the Dunn brothers decided to open with a radical cash-only approach to selling lumber and other goods. They even cut their own monthly salaries in half. The business lost money for the first 6 months, but it soon turned a corner and remained profitable for the rest of the Depression. A few years later, the slogan "It pays to pay cash" was widely advertised until credit cards became popular in the 80s. As the country emerged from World War II, the Seattle economy exploded. The Dunn brothers expanded the business by purchasing additional lumber yards. The growing affluence of homeowners brought many do-it-yourselfers into lumber yards, and Dunn Lumber became known for good advice and quality materials at a fair price. In 1948, Charles and Ed purchased our Shoreline location. In 1953, Charles and Ed purchased a lumberyard in Moses Lake after reading an article in the Harvard Business Review, which named the city as one of the fastest growing in all of Washington. 2 additional yards sprung up around that same time, and we closed the Moses Lake location in 1959. Although a logical move in the 50s, we now know that our model works best in dense urban environments where service and quality mean as much as price. We purchased the MARYSVILLE yard in 1964. It was around that time that the next generation of the family began to leave its mark. While James M. Kosho was running the new MARYSVILLE yard, Eddie Dunn was reaching out to the hot apartment market in and around Seattle. Rob and Tom were still in school but working at various locations as needed. We made the decision to sell MARYSVILLE in 2011 because the retail opportunities had moved north to Smoky Point. Although we are no longer in that market, the 42-year investment in MARYSVILLE became the working capital that helped us survive the Great Recession. Although we purchased the Renton location in 1959, it belonged solely to Charles Dunn and was called Renton Cashway until Charles retired in 1974 and sold the yard to Ed Dunn and his son Eddie. All of our locations except EVERETT, KIRKLAND, and LYNNWOOD have been acquired from previous owners, which allows us to be closely connected to the histories of our various communities. In 1976, we purchased a piece of property in EVERETT and built our first yard from the ground up. James M. Kosho led the team that developed the location's design and systems, many of which continue to this day. We bought our second raw piece of property in 1978 and built our Dunn Lumber Kirkland store, located in the Totem Lake neighborhood. Fresh out of UW, I began managing this store, and I'm happy to say some of my original crew from the 70s still work at Dunn. In 1980, we purchased Campbell Building Supply with 2 locations in South Seattle and Federal Way. The Federal Way yard offered a drive-through self-service concept, which ultimately didn't fit our service model. We closed Federal Way in 1995 and South Seattle in 2012. We bought our third piece of property in 1984 and built our LYNNWOOD location. With each yard built from scratch, we improved our design for better displays, storage, and efficiency. We learned a valuable lesson when we purchased Field Lumber in Kent in 1989. That location and easy access matter. Accessible from only one direction with very little parking, building volume proved impossible, and we sold this yard in 2003. In 1995, we purchased the Henry Bacon yard, which became our Dunn Lumber Bellevue location. We purchased Logan Lumber in 2003, which became our Dunn Lumber Normandy Park location. At Normandy Park, we tried a new approach to acquisition by changing inventory and appearance very slowly. Existing loyal customers were converted slowly from skeptical Logan loyalists to fully converted Dunn fans over a few years. In 2004, we purchased Olson Lumber, which became our Dunn Lumber Green Lake location. We took our lessons from Normandy Park and put them into practice, keeping the Olson Lumber name and yellow and green exterior for a few years while customers got to know us. It was a great show of success when later, repainting the store and changing the name created an increase in business. In 2009, we purchased Parker Lumber East, a house package lumberyard, and attempted to operate it and a small retail store we called Dunn Lumber Mill Creek on the same property. For 4 years of the recession, we struggled to make it profitable, and when the lease ran out and it was a choice to buy the property or walk away, we closed its doors in 2012. It was a hard lesson, but a good one, and it strengthened our commitment to build trusting relationships with remodelers and do-it-yourselfers. My great-grandfather made a promise that Dunn Lumber would always give our customers and employees a square deal. More than 100 years later, our fourth and fifth generations' dedication to keeping my family's promise remains the same.